Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Cosmic Barbecue with me, Matt in the Real World, Mikey J. Shields, and Jim Dammit of Dinosaur Pileup. And we've got Ollie Bailey, our esteemed tour manager, in for this episode to run us through a couple of things.
Welcome.
The man, the
How are we all
myth, the
doing?
legend.
Lolly Bailey.
How are you all?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good, man. Just in the cave, ready to get some knowledge. Ready to share some knowledge. What are we chatting about today, Mike? You're usually the dude in the know.
Yeah, I don't know how this has happened. It's just always falling on my shoulders now, so that's cool.
Yep.
Today we are talking about so we already told the story about when we went from Buffalo to do South by and flew back to Burlington, Vermont, and then we met that fucking freaky guy. Now I thought we'd get Ollie on to regale us with the tale of his fucking drive himself, and then also because he was present for the time that I needed some medical assistance on the flight, I thought it'd be good to discuss that one as well.
The second time you died.
Yeah, we've got to discuss the first time you died as well.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the first one.
Yeah.
So maybe
I need a drink for this one if I'm going to dig up all these memories.
It was traumatic.
maybe. Well, I mean, we should start with Ollie's journey, and then maybe that can run into Mikey dying, and then Mikey dying the second time. Let's see how time works out.
Yeah. So we got on.
Cool. So.
I like how it's just that casual now.
Planning the podcast live in it.
Yeah.
I was talking about me dying, but yeah, that's cool.
Oh right, yeah. So I mean, how do you want to kick it off? I guess maybe a good place to kick it off would be, even though we sort of roughly talked about this journey, not in detail at all, in the last episode, but maybe a good place to kick it off would be sort of where we were and where we were coming from, where we were going, when Ollie's journey began.
Yeah,
would that
exactly.
be a good way to do it?
Yeah. And Ollie's probably the best one to remember exactly where we were. And I want every single painful detail revisited and relived.
Well, I wake up
if you
in
need to
cold
cry,
sweats
man,
every
if you
night
need to cry,
over
just
it.
cry.
So,
Yeah, I want to hear you.
I've shed many a tear.
I want to hear you weeping weeping through this. I don't even want to understand what you're saying. I just want it to be that. I want it to be that type of crying. That type of, So as soon as
people
you can
think
get that
this
going,
life is so glamorous as well. You wait to hear this.
Okay, so Bags, what was the lead up, man? Oh, by the way, for the listeners, if any of us refer to someone called Bags in this call, we're referring to Ollie.
Yeah.
Somehow that could get confusing, but somehow over the years of touring, well, like Oliver Bagley has become the Bagley.
Oliver Bailey, you mean?
Oliver Bailey.
Oliver Bailey has become.
His real name.
It's so second nature to just say Bagley.
His birth name, Ollie Bagley.
Ollie's name is anyway. So Bags is Ollie. Just so you know, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know. I think it was 2014, wasn't it? Because we were on that tour with Brick and Mortar and Middle Class Rut.
Yeah.
Oh, was that long one? Was it?
It was that one, I think. Yeah. And so you guys, so somewhere in the middle of that tour, you got confirmed for a showcase at South by Southwest, and so. You did, so you flew down to that, and obviously we had to continue with the tour as well. So the only way that we could get, the rest of the gear and the van and myself was for me to stay with the van while you guys fly off to Texas, and then I continue on. So I was in Buffalo, so I guess
it was just us and Fitzy, right?
Yeah,
and then you as well, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess I can't remember if you flew from Buffalo or not, but I remember I was in Buffalo. That's where I started this whole ordeal.
Okay, so I can tell, I can hear the chills in your voice bags already. I can hear it just like as he starts to get into it. He's like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" Had we just played a show in Buffalo then? Was that the vibe?
It might well have been the case. Yeah, it might have been in Buffalo. I do remember doing something Niagara Fallsy as well, so it would make sense if we went there. But anyway, so I remember being there. I was in Buffalo on my own in this hotel the evening before, so it would have been the day that you flew, and I went into this bar next door for some food. There was a
Classic you.
Solo bar. Yeah. There was a wing eating contest going on at the time. The first time I'd ever seen it, and it was a sight. Yeah. I was taken back by it.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I just remember seeing on the news, on all the TVs about this blizzard that was coming in. And I think it had started snowing at that point as well.
Well, it had already been quite a snowy tour, I remember. Like from early on in like Spokane, it was really heavy snow. And then because the whole first part of the tour was obviously up north, it was already pretty cold anyway. And we were just fucking jetting off to sunny Austin. Like, see you later.
Well, it would have been around this sort of time of year, wouldn't it? I mean, South by is now pretty much. Well, it's in May, isn't it? So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it would have been this time of year. Yeah, and then so I remember seeing on the news that all the schools the next day had been closed because this blizzard was coming in. But then, obviously, ahead of me, I had this journey to Burlington, Vermont, which is it's like 6 3/4 hours, I think. It's about 400 miles or something like that.
A chill one.
Yeah, just a nice chill one to do on your own.
By yourself.
And like Vermont's probably not the hottest place in the world anyway.
Well, yeah, so... if it's snowing in Buffalo, it's going to be snowing in Vermont, twice as hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had to get there because obviously you guys were then flying back from Austin into Burlington, where I had to then meet you. So I had to get there. So I set off in the morning. It was already snowing. It was pretty bad. You know what the freeways are like in the US when you're driving on them, you can barely see the road as it is.
Yeah.
It was just pretty much like that from the moment I left. Which
it sounds like it's
nice.
Like this is like some bad plot to a sort of time crisis movie where you like have to get there, which you did. You had to get to your destination. Yet as soon as you start your journey, you're just up against it immediately.
Begin.
You know, the problems begin.
Yeah.
It's like the start of a movie, like a Die Hard movie, but Ollie Bailey.
So you had 600 miles to go, but 2 days to do it.
Well, less than that, I think, because I had the day to do it, and I think you were flying in the morning, the following morning.
We were only down in Austin for like one whole day, weren't we?
That's it.
Yeah. So I had the day to do it basically, and then get you the following day in the morning. So I remember I set off. Started out my day all right, actually, with a really nice breakfast burrito. I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically.
That's a fucking great way to start the day,
Specifically, remember that one.
That
was the highlight of the day.
The Mexican food being particularly great that far north of America, but
no, but like I say, when that's the highlight of your day, it's going south.
Oh mate, fucking hell.
But yeah, anyway, so I carried on. The further I got, the worse it got, and then I just noticed all of the cars stopping. Really, like there was no cars on the freeway. That you had the occasional truck, going by, and I went further and further, and then you started seeing less and less trucks.
What was the terrain like where you were driving?
This wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad at this point because it was still on the motorway, on the freeway. Okay. But that when you stop seeing trucks on the freeway, that it's getting real. But by that stage, I was already invested in it, and I had to go. So
I mean, like US truckers are like hardcore. So if they're starting to stop,
oh yeah, they won't fucking stop.
If they're starting to stop, little old Bagley just out on his own, not stopping. Fucking hell, Jesus
it is
Christ.
Little Mercedes Sprinter.
I can't imagine. He must be fucking terrified.
I remember we talked about like whether we should have chains or not, but I don't think we had any then, did we?
No, not at that point. Well, I mean, no, we didn't. But also, we weren't expecting that that weather. We had winter tires. I do remember that. But but they were no good in this instance. Well, anyway, the way it's going as well, and you realise why. But I remember it was probably at this point when I was starting to get a bit freaked out because there was no one else around, and it was at this point as well where there was just no like towns around or anything, and so I couldn't really, even if I wanted to dip in somewhere and sort of abandon it, I couldn't really because there was just nothing else around. So I had to just keep going until I reached something, you know. But I remember then calling.
How long have you been driving at this point?
I reckon I probably got, so this journey, the whole journey was for about 6 3/4 hours, and I managed. Obviously, I was driving way slower as well. And overall, I remember the whole journey took me, I think, 13 hours from start to finish.
To do a 6-hour journey.
Yeah, because obviously I had to drive slow because I didn't want to crash.
Yeah,
so, but I remember I was probably about 5 hours into the journey and not really as anywhere near where I needed to be.
Haven't left Buffalo.
Yeah. I hadn't even got out of the car park of the Holiday Inn at this point. But I remember then calling Adam, your manager, because he was down in Texas with you. And I was like, look, mate, don't want to freak you out, but I am pretty freaked out. You know, I just want to let you know that this is the situation right now. I don't really know what I expected from it. He couldn't do anything about it, but it was just like having a bit of human, interaction was probably what I needed at that point. A bit of a morale boost. Like, you can do it. Come on.
And to be fair, Adam's pretty good at giving that. Yeah. He's pretty good at giving that.
So I just wanted to make him aware of the sitch, and then I carried on. And then I remember this is when it starts getting pretty rough, is because I turned off of the freeway and started going on to just a route. So I don't know what route it was, but let's say like Route 74 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So it's less like treated than a freeway, you know. It's not salted or gritted and stuff like that. So then it started becoming weird, and it started going up as well. So I was like, okay, at this point, right, okay, I'm going up. It's snowing. It's only going to get worse. But like I say, there was no town around or anything like that. So it was just like, well, I can't. I'm too far to turn around. I hadn't seen anything in ages anyway, so I'm just gonna have to keep going.
You got the heating on full blast. The music's probably off at this point, so you can fully concentrate.
Yeah, the music's down, so you can see better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man,
it was full concentration mode. It got to the point as well. I can't for the life of me remember what the mountain range was that I drove through. But if you just Google map the route from like Buffalo to Vermont, then you'll see it.
I'm actually currently looking at it, and all of the sort of green around the route that you're talking about, all the names are like something wilderness, something wild forest.
No way.
Yeah.
Something wilderness. Yeah, it's nuts. And there's no towns in there.
I know, it's all just like green, isn't it, on the map?
2/3 of the journey is just green. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in there somewhere, wherever you're looking now. And
the wilderness.
Yeah, I'm in
Hofmeister.
And I remember it got so bad, the road, that you just couldn't see, if you looked to the left or right, like you couldn't see where it started and ended. You knew either side of it that there was a ditch somewhere, but the ditch was filled with snow, so you wouldn't be able to see. So, and there was no other cars on the road anyway, so I just sort of stayed in the middle of what I thought was the road, you know, so you can kind of just gauge where the middle is. I wasn't at risk of hitting any other car anyway, put it that way.
Yeah. But you're crawling uphill in this like fucking tiny road. like probably at about 5 miles an hour, trying to guess where to see it. I remember being in the van a few times when it snowed that heavily, and like because everything's fucking grey, and then the snow's really
white,
thick.
yeah.
You literally have
You're just
zero
white,
visibility.
Yeah.
And I
like
it was at this point as well. I remember that it started getting really weird because the windscreen wipers on the van froze.
Oh my god!
And they had about
one thing after another.
They had about 3 inches of like compacted snow, and obviously it was still snowing, so you had to have the windscreen wipers on to stop, to move the snow out the way, so you could see well as best you could. But so I had to keep getting out and breaking the ice off of the windscreen wipers so they work. But then, 5 minutes later, it'd be much the same again anyway. So that slowed my progress as it was. And then I remember the signal, my phone signal was dropping in and out. I had like 1 bar of signal when I was at this point, and I was like, fuck, okay. If something does happen here, I am truly on my own.
You get into my favourite bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Ollie's like, this is where it gets weird, and Matt's like, this is where it gets good.
I tell you what, at one point as well, I got out and I looked at the front at one of these times when I was clearing the ice off the windscreen wipers. I got out, I looked at the front of the van. It was so cold that this black van was just pure white because it was just frozen. The front of it was, honestly, I'll dig this photo out after this and I'll send it to you so you can see it. I'm sure you've seen it before, but it still chills me looking at it. But
did you even bother pulling over when you were getting out of the van, or because no one was around, did you just stop?
I was literally in the middle of the road with the door open. Because, I mean, it was a straight road as well. You could see anything coming, but there was nothing coming, so it's fine.
I can't imagine how fucking scary being alone on the road and on an American road and having literally nothing else, and you're on a mountain or whatever.
I can't imagine, man.
Yeah, it was really cool. I'll do it again.
So this is where you lost reception. So is this where you send your mum your coordinates, or is that?
Yep.
Okay, so that's now.
Yeah. Yeah, this happened. So I was particularly worried at this point because I couldn't get hold of anyone if I wanted to because my signal was out, and no one knew where I was because I was in the middle of this fucking mountain range. And so I managed. I remember seeing my 1 bar of signal come on my phone, and I was like, yes. I was like, this could be it. This could save me here. So I managed to find my coordinates on the map, and bear in mind the time difference from the US to the UK, but I think I text my mum my coordinates, but she must have got that. Let's say it was, I don't know, 10 p.m. at night or something, or whatever it would have been there, or whatever. And I think that was it. I just texted the coordinates because I couldn't send anything else. No context to it.
Oh, what? I thought you'd at least be like...
No, I think I tried.
What? I thought you didn't...
I tried to, but it wouldn't send through. I managed to get the coordinate message to send, I remember, and I couldn't send any other message because I was still sort of travelling at this point, and obviously the signal was dipped out. But so you can imagine, bless her, you can imagine how... freaked out she must have been. But
she gets through some coordinates and then she's like, can't get a text,
try and work that out.
To call you, nothing else is going through. You'd be like, what the fuck?
I know, but it was like, that was my one thing, that was the only thing going through my head at that point. So I can only imagine the headspace I must have been in. Like, I must have been truly like fearful for my life at that point, because I can't imagine any other situation where I'd even consider sending. Like, if you don't hear from me, this is where I was. So
just
look for me around here.
What's so painful about this as well is the contrast of where Ollie was to where we were.
Yeah,
we're in the boiling.
I'd love it if it was
in the
show.
Boiling heat in Austin, probably slugging beers, like playing a rock show or whatever. I mean, albeit Mike knocking out his front teeth and crushing them into a fine dust.
I was going to say, didn't you knock your tooth out, Mike? Yeah.
Yeah, we went over this on the previous pod, but I'd definitely take knocking a tooth out over the.
But it's just like
ordeal.
the sun, heat, like millions and millions of people flash back to where Bagley is in this cold, Arctic
contrast.
expanse of loneliness and existential dread.
Just sent your coordinates to your mum.
No resentment whatsoever.
Okay, so
But yeah, so continuing on from there, so I managed to go further and further. It was the only thing I could do. Like I said, there's nothing else around anyway. And then I remember
Was
coming
it getting
off.
dark?
oh my god.
It was the afternoon at that point. It was the afternoon, and then I remember coming off of that road, and then having to go on an even sort of more rural road.
Fuck.
And then by that point I had no signal, and to put a cherry on top of the cake, the fuel light came on.
Oh my fucking god.
And
You've got the fucking heating running full blast.
it
as
gets
well,
worse
which is
as
not
well.
the
It
way
gets
it
worse.
is.
I did have the heat on because it was honestly about minus 15 outside as well at this point. And then and so I was like, well, if I do get stuck, at least I can keep the heating on. And then the fuel light come on, and I was like, well, that's me gone. Because it's like, well, I can't even have the engine on to keep the heat on now, and I'm just going to freeze to death. So I don't know what the better alternative is. So again, just more ammunition to make me continue to get somewhere at least. And then I remember turning a corner, and this is when I thought I was really fucked, is when I saw that the weight of the snow on a tree had brought a tree down in my path on this road.
Christ.
So on the road I'm driving on, I looked ahead, there was a fallen tree. And I'm like, this, there's no other way around it. So I was like, this is me done, basically.
So you're by yourself. You've been driving for hours.
Petrol
You're on
lights
low
on.
fuel.
Yeah. And
Did you scream or cry? Be honest.
no, I do
little
remember
cry.
it was one of those it was one of those
a little
fight
cry.
or flight reactions, It's not
Yeah.
going to do you any good freaking out or panicking in that situation. You got to bring your A game and figure out what you're going to do here. And
Plus, you're scared if you
I
cry,
would
it just
be
frees to your face.
losing my
yeah, and
shit,
also
man. I
yeah,
would have been losing it.
the fear
I
of
would
death
be.
was there. So it was actually just more of a survival instinct, to be honest with you, at that point.
Fucking hell.
But I remember thinking, like, how am I going to get over this tree? I remember getting out of the car or getting out of the van, going up to it, walking up to it, and the snow was like, halfway up my shins,
Oh
I
my
think,
God.
at this point. So, and I looked at how big it was, and I thought, well, if I try and drive over that, what's going to happen? And obviously, the things that go through your mind is that you're going to ruin the suspension of the vehicle, or you could go over it and then you could like slide off the
control.
road. But anyway, I was like, I have no other option, so I'm just gonna have to do this. So I went for it, basically.
How much of a run up did you give yourself?
Well, obviously I couldn't go too fast because snow.
Yeah.
And I knew, and annoyingly, as soon as you would have gone over the tree, there was a turn in the road, so it veered off
Oh
to
my
the right.
God.
So you wouldn't been able to go that fast because you would have just come off the road. So I did it. I got some speed up and just used like the momentum, and I knew that it was going to be like an almighty thud. And like I say, I didn't know if it was going to, fuck the
Ruin the
van up
fucking
or
van,
not,
yeah.
but I had no other option. So I went for it, and I got over it, fortunately enough. And
What
then
happened when you hit it?
Did
you just fucking bounce over?
Yeah, it was awful. It was
Fucking hell.
loud and it was scary as shit. But I remember then when I hit that corner, I do remember, because the van still had that momentum going, I do remember it sliding sideways, like towards the ditch.
Bro.
But it did. I did manage to like steady it somewhat, and I say we. I'm saying we like the van is a person here now, because I became that attached to it.
Me and the
It was my
old girl.
lifeline. Yeah. And yeah. Anyway, I do remember sliding and just being like, and I was like, I can't have gone all this way. Just got over a tree. I'm not going in a ditch here now. But anyway, managed to like regain control of it and carry on, and then went over a little bridge, and then I saw it was getting pretty dark at this point as well, and I do remember in the distance seeing some like light pollution, which obviously means there's like a town or some lights or some civilization.
Is this a fucking mirage or?
Yeah, and so I got to this town. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a tiny little town, and there was this petrol station, and I really needed some gas, obviously at this point, but it was closed. So I couldn't get any, but I did
just
see
misery.
Yeah, I did see. Yeah. I saw this guy shuffling about in this petrol station. Obviously worked there, but the shop or the whatever itself was closed. But I went in, like desperately banged on the window, got this guy's attention. He'd come over, opened the door, and I was like, excuse me, mate, is there anywhere in this town that I can stay, like a hotel or I don't know, B&B or anything like that? And he was like, no, not here. And I was like, okay, well, I need some gas. And he was like, sorry, we can't do that. I even think he might have said something about the pumps.
No way.
Something like that. But you could see that it was like the whole forecourt of the gas station was just
dude, this is just a fucking roller coaster. You eventually get somewhere, you see something, lights are off, go bang on the door, wakes up, sorry, nowhere to stay, and also the gas pumps are frozen.
I know. I was so stoked as well when I saw just another person. I was so stoked, and then that happened, but he did say if you go about 3 miles and then pointed in this direction, like this way, there's a town and they have a motel, and I was like, all right, okay, I'm going to do it. And by this point, I was just dangerously low on fuel. But I was like, 3 miles, that's all right. I can do this. Obviously, I was just going along at like 15 mile an hour or whatever because it was just so snowy. But
so 8 hours later.
Yeah, by this point, it was honestly, like 12 hours later or something. And then I got to this town, and as I was pulling into it, I remember looking to my left, and there was this Super 8 motel, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I was a bit overcome with emotion, to be honest with you. As soon as that was like my mecca.
Oh man, this is the ugly crying bit that I was so up for at the beginning of the episode. This is the ugly crying bit.
There was, but I was like, I need to get there, and it didn't look open, to be honest. But I pulled into the parking lot of it and rapped on the door.
All right, Santa.
Super suave, like nothing's happened.
The door.
And then this person came over, and I was like, please tell me you're open. Like, I desperately need somewhere to stay. And they were like, well, the storm's so bad. We are open. The storm's so bad that all the people that work here are actually just staying here for the night because they can't get home. And I was like, okay, I need a room. And this town, I remember, was called Ticonderoga. If you look on the map, Jim, you can probably find it.
Have a little look on the map now.
It's Ticonderoga, and it turns out that this place is 50 miles away from Burlington, which was obviously my initial destination.
Oh, so shit! Not even that far.
There was no way I would have been able to have made it to Burlington, but I couldn't actually believe how far I'd managed to get. And I remember the person behind reception being like, how have you been driving in this? Like, where have you just come from? And I was like, Buffalo.
She starts crying.
Like, what? And then I was starving as well, I can remember. And I was like, this is a really sweet part, actually, because I was like, is there anywhere I can get food around here? Because, I was pretty overcome with emotion. I managed to get to this place, and I got into the room. And then I was like, is there any way I can get any food? There was this McDonald's across the road from the hotel, but it was closed. And
McDonald's don't shut for shit in America.
Yeah, so. I know. And it was,
that's
and I
something.
couldn't, I think this is like 2014 as well. So we might even be talking about the days before, like Deliveroo and just eating Uber Eats and stuff like that, So, I then received, like, I got this knock at the door, on my hotel room door, and the people that worked there must have felt sorry for me, and they'd ordered in some like Chinese food earlier on in the afternoon, and and they just gave me whatever Chinese
so
they had
nice,
left over.
Oh.
And
That's really nice.
I remember then in the van as well. I remember there was like a case of PBR or something in the back, and I was like, do you know what? I fucking deserve a beer, so I'm gonna get a beer and I'm gonna eat this Chinese food. I'm gonna have a sit down cry shower, and then
you go out to the van to get yourself a beer and it's frozen.
Yeah, honestly, it was, but it was like, it was cold and the room was warm, and I was like, I need this. And then I do honestly just remember sitting there, just drinking it, just like looking at the wall and just being like, what?
And that's when you came up with the idea for Deliveroo.
Yeah, and now I'm a multi-millionaire, so it's all good. I still deliver.
Left turn, didn't it? Still deliver.
But yeah, and then so that was that. I mean, I got there and it was pretty traumatic, and honestly, from time to time I do still sit there and think about it. And whenever I drive in snow now, I'm like, this ain't that bad.
Cautious. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm like I've done worse, you know. But that's just one of those stories. But I don't think honestly I've ever feared for my life so much, or been quite. I didn't realize really until sort of afterwards how close and how lucky I'd been, because I could easily have just frozen stuff anywhere there.
Mate,
like, having no reception or anything.
That would have been no joke.
And you would have been fucked.
I know, if I'd not got over that tree, or if I had ended up going into the ditch after hitting that tree,
or running out of petrol earlier,
that would have been it.
Yeah.
I mean, but there was, honestly, I looked back as well. I was like, what else could I have done, really? Like, I could have fueled up, but I'm pretty sure when I, set off, and I got fuel at like the last place I could have. So I honestly just couldn't. I mean, the smart thing for me to have done would just be to not have fucking left Buffalo, but but I needed to, and I couldn't see any other. There was literally no other alternative. It was like it was going to be snowing for a few days, and I had all of your backline and equipment and all of the tour stuff, and the tour needed to roll on. So that was just what needed to happen. And then I remember the following day, woke up, it was actually a really sunny morning, and I set off to go to Burlington to meet you lot, pick you up from the airport.
Oh yeah.
And then do you remember what happened?
Got lost or whatever, didn't it?
Yeah, I do.
I just remember
bags
this.
didn't land
Yeah.
Yeah.
You turned up. No, you turned up, and then none of your guitars ended up making away.
Yeah.
So they were still in Austin. You were here, but all your stuff, all your like breakables and your fly gear was still in Austin. It didn't make it onto the flight. So
we hadn't really talked to you about any of this at this point either. And I remember rolling in, and it had been a particularly hairy flight. We were in like one of those
no, you didn't know any of this had happened.
No. We were in one of those like propeller planes, and it was coming over the hills, and it was fucking bumpy. And then we were landing on this runway that was covered in snow. So I remember like when we eventually saw you, I was like, dude, fucking hell, we've just had the worst journey.
Oh, mate.
I can't remember what my reaction was to that, but
you had the
probably
1,000-yard stare.
Probably pretty funny at the time. Yeah, and then to top it all off,
and then
all your instruments. So I remember it was the day of the show. The following day was the day of the show, and then I had to just get up really early, go to the airport.
But that night, after losing our gear, that was the night that then we went to the hotel and Murder Man was knocking about. You know? Yes, you're staying on the third floor, dude. So
God,
so like
psychopath.
What a couple of days. Like,
I mean, this is touring in winter is cool.
Brutal.
There's a couple. I mean, we've had a couple of situations like that. I also remember we were supposed to be going to when we played a show in Spokane, I think, and then that's when it had freezing rain. Remember that? Yeah. And we left, and the whole road was just like glistening because it was just ice. And then we couldn't play Portland the next day because we couldn't physically get there, so we had to drive for 19 hours through the mountains to get to.
Oh, was that the day that we did that massive journey down through? Was it the Sierra Nevadas?
We start because we stayed in a place called Kennewick. That night we actually had a really fun night that evening. We found a shuffleboard.
Yeah.
Oh, that Irish bar.
Yeah, we had a fun evening, and then if only we knew what was laying ahead the following day, because we had to the journey door to door. I remember this was from where our hotel was to where we ended up, which I think was in a place called Big Pine in the Sierra Nevadas.
Big Pine.
But
Sounds about right.
That's like 13 and a half hours just door to door on a good day, like let alone having to take all like B roads and stuff like that because the freeways are closed.
Yeah,
but that's a whole other story.
Wasn't that
the ice murder death
on that
hotel.
drive? Didn't we? I mean, I might have got this completely wrong, but I seem to remember that we bypassed the canyon to go and see the canyon, and it was so snowy that we got halfway up the trail and then just had to turn around again.
That was a different story. That was after we played Vegas.
Yeah.
I think that was that might well have been on the same tour though.
I think it was Chevelle.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah,
I think it could have been on the same tour, but yeah, that was another one. Because we've tried going to the Grand Canyon a few times and always been.
I've been in Margaritaville a few times.
Yeah. Nature.
That was just particularly depressing.
Nature's had its way with us. But yeah, that was that story anyway, going from Buffalo to Burlington, and that was Thanks for that. That was pretty traumatic. I'm gonna have a little another shower cry now.
Shower cry, man.
No, I'll dig out that photo of the van though and show it to you, because that one photo will tell you everything you need to.
I remember. Okay, so go on. Sorry, Al.
And then what? Sorry, what was the other one that you story that you wanted to go on about?
Well, yeah, I think because we want to talk about Mikey nearly dying, but I don't know if we've got time to do both the stories. And seeing as we've got Ollie here, maybe we should just concentrate on his.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can talk about the first time another time,
because there's more stuff we can talk about. That the first time Mike died, quite a lot happened in that day, so we could talk about more stuff than just that. But the second time Mike died was on an airplane, and he was sat right next to Oliver Bailey. So
it was at the end of the Canadian tour.
It was only recently. It was December, right?
Yeah.
This December, just gone.
Which Jim unfortunately couldn't be a part of because
I wasn't at, so I'm actually super pumped to hear this story.
But I think we can all agree, you, Matt, and Ollie, that it was probably one of the hardest tours we've ever done in terms of just general fatigue.
Like,
it
was difficult.
No, it was. Because I mean, again, it was a winter tour, and it was in a country renowned for being covered in snow and being freezing. So, I mean, that takes its toll on you mentally and physically anyway, when you're standing in like minus 20 odd degrees every day for an amount of hours, like you just feel knackered, let alone.
Yeah. And because the country's so massive and we had so many long drives, there were so many shows which we had to bail early on so we could get a head start and make sure we get to the next venue on time. Just to give you an idea of like how much time we spent in the van, it was unreasonable.
I remember one show day drive was like 7.5 hours, wasn't it?
On the show day,
just to get to the show and then play it, and then do like 2-3 hours after it as well.
Kind of illustrate that to maybe people that are listening to this that don't tour, like doing a 7-hour, 8-hour drive on a non-show day when you've played the show the day before, the night before, then you have a day off where you drive a huge distance to get to the city for the show the next day. You do that drive on an off day. That's exhausting enough as it is. But on that a whole working day.
That's
in
a working
the van.
Day spent
Whereas
in the van.
We were doing that on show days. So we'd get up at 6 a.m, be driving 8 hours, get to the venue in time for load in and sound check and set up,
get in for load in,
get some food. I mean, the fatigue, oh my fucking God, when we stood there in sound check, I was fucked. We were all just fucked. And then we play.
Oh, dude.
Just
so many times we looked at each other in the middle of that. Men, like, we just shells of men.
I mean, when you put it into perspective like that as well, you do like a 7-8 hour drive to get to the show, but in reality your work starts when you get to the show. Like my work starts, all the admin side of things, your work starts from a performance, side of things. But the driving aspect of it is a formality, really, because it just has to be done to get it there. But when you do something like that and you drive for 8 odd hours, and you feel pretty spaced out, all of us do, when you get to where you're supposed to go, and then you're supposed to start work.
and the other flip side to that is, like, normally when we're touring and we have like a 8-9 hour drive, that's a long day, right? And then you celebrate at the end of that by like, yes, we're not in the van.
Go
and
to
you
Hooters.
have drinks. And you normally have more drinks than you need, but you're just happy to not be in the van and you celebrate. So when you do that nearly every day, and then some of those days are show days, your alcohol intake just fucking skyrockets.
But also, like, on those days, who's cracking one open? Is that
Guilty?
Amazing, man. But like, we were doing those 8-hour drives, then we'd have a full work day at the show. So you load in, you sound check, you do all that shit, then you play the actual show, and that's like a dinosaur show is pretty full on. Then you load out, then you are doing all you need to do, and then a lot of the times we'd have to do 3 hours after the show to make sure we had enough distance under our belt for the next day's drive.
Yeah.
So like, you're setting off on another 3-hour drive at like 11 p.m. maybe. It's just so fucking relentless, man.
I always felt so bad as well, because we'd be there trying to sort of hang out and get some really good time in with like Sum 41 in this case, and the Offspring. And Ollie would always feel so guilty about like coming over and be like, "Come on, guys, we literally have to go. We've got fucking 3.5 hours to drive tonight before we have to get up at 6 a.m. tomorrow." So yeah, I always felt bad because we'd kind of overstay.
I mean, it is difficult. I like letting you do that. Like, I like letting you do it, and I think it's important that you do build those relationships and stuff like that. But you know what I'm like. If it is an important thing to do, then I don't really make it shy away from telling you that we do need to go and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. And that tour in particular, just, I mean, not to put a down on it, but it probably was one of my least favorite ones in terms of just, like you say, how just difficult it was. And this probably does then lead on to the airplane, to the incident.
Exactly.
Well, okay, so let's fast forward through this brutal tour to the incident. But so when we got on that plane, right, we were all so exhausted, all so fucked and fatigued. We were just praying for a kind of undersold flight so we could maybe all get an aisle and lie out and maybe get some kit.
Which is a great move.
Flying economy.
A great move.
I do also remember that morning, because we had to cross back into the US because we were flying out of Seattle, and we all know
really
the Canadian border back into the US can be particularly frustrating sometimes and take a number of hours with all the paperwork and things like that you need to get through. So I remember us setting off really early that morning because I wanted to give us a few hours, because I mean we've been stuck at that border before for like 3 or 4 hours, and obviously if we're then getting a flight that very same day, I remember getting us to set off really early, just to sort of compensate for that. But we made it through actually relatively unscathed, that one, and then got to the flight. So not only were we knackered from the tour, but I think we got up at like 4:30, 5 in the morning.
Yeah, we had about 3 hours sleep, and I remember when we got to the airport, eventually we had to leave the van in the car park where the van rental company were just going to pick it up. So we dropped it off in the car park. We got all our stuff out the back and kind of sorted it out. And there was one moment, Bags, where you were so fatigued that I saw you. You were trying to fold the little backdrop, and you were so fucked that you were just kind of shutting down. And this actually leads on to another little thing I want to talk about, just to illustrate how tired we were. But I first noticed it with you, and you were trying to fold the backdrop, and you just kind of couldn't. And you just sort of, I saw you just suddenly just like kind of hunker down, like kneel down on your haunches, like crouch down. And you just sort of stopped, like you like shut down. I was like, holy fuck. So I went over and I got off you. I was like, just mate, it's chill. just take a minute, because like you were so tired, you were just literally shutting down. So then we kind of wrapped up all our stuff, and then we took it into the airport, and then you, Ollie, me, and Mike, the lady at the desk was saying, "How many items have you got with you? How many items?" Can you remember this?
Yeah.
She was like, "How many items have you got?"
Yeah, I
And we had 12, I think.
I remember it.
And 12 or 13. And all of us would start
12 or 13.
counting at 1, and we'd be going through our gear, 1, 2, 3, and none of us could get to 12. None of us could count to 12.
The thing is, I knew how many items we had. Like, I knew how many items
Yeah.
we were flying, but obviously to just double check, you just recount, don't you? Anyway, and then
Yeah.
and I do
us-
remember that
yeah.
vividly, not being able to get past that, not even getting halfway and being like, "What?
None
What
of
were we
us
at?"
could get past 8 or anything.
Yeah.
And then she
All
must
of
have
us
been
were,
looking
like,
at us,
struggling
being like,
so
"What
hard
is going
just
on
to be
here?"
like, wait, what
Yeah.
number am I on? It was mental.
Was that the time I found that piece of
Yeah,
paper that
yeah,
said that the
that-
flight had been cancelled?
That
and I
was
brought it back,
the
brought it over
worst,
to
probably
you
one of,
guys.
Yeah,
Mike has,
it was,
has
yeah.
a habit of ill-timed jokes at the best of times. That was maybe the most ill-timed joke you could have got me with. Mikey found a piece of paper saying like an official it was like an official apology and
Like
compensation for
compensation for
this
the
flight
flights
being
or whatever.
cancelled. It wasn't our flight.
Yeah.
This is classic Mike.
This
Read
is classic
the fucking
you,
room.
Mike.
Read the room.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh no, I can picture your
he
face.
picks up this piece of
thinking this
paper
through.
that happened to be the right destination, like for our flight being cancelled, but it wasn't our flight. And he comes
Yeah.
up to me, with this
I thought I'd hit the
that look
jackpot.
of shock and terror, and he's like, "Look at this!" And I, in my like operating on 15% brain capacity, look at this piece of paper. And my heart literally broke into pieces. I thought I was about to cry.
Your face, man, was a picture.
It wasn't.
Oh my god,
mate.
it was worth it. Just for
Was it
that.
worth it,
Yeah,
Mike? Was it worth
It
it?
was so funny. But then I told you, I obviously broke it to you, and you were like, "Oh
Yeah.
my fucking god!" You were like, "I literally thought I was just gonna fucking end it." And then
It
I was like, I'm glad
definitely
it
would
was
have.
you came
It
over because I
definitely
thought
would
about
have
doing it to
broken him,
Ollie, and I
man.
thought it might have broken
It
him.
would have broken him. Anyway, fast forward to the flight, and I remember it was kind of like mid-sold. It wasn't quiet, but it wasn't like stacked. And I remember there was a couple of rows behind us, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Lads, I'm gonna, as soon as the seatbelt sign is off, I'm gonna bounce to one of those rows." And all you guys were like, "Yeah, man, go for it. Like, get some kip." And my story sort of ends there because as soon as the seatbelt light went off, I bolted to that aisle, and I woke up as we landed.
Right. Well,
Like,
so
yeah.
yeah, you woke up and found out. So a couple of things. It's important to say that we started in Seattle, so it was a fucking long flight. How long is that? Like 12, 13-hour flight?
Yeah, I think it's between like 9 to 11 hours or something. I think I can't remember specifically. But
Oh,
something
okay.
like that.
Yeah. And then important to note as well, before we got on, we'd already had quite a few drinks, I think.
Celebratory.
Before we flew. Yeah. Celebratory, knackered, have a couple of drinks before we got on the flight.
Yeah, it was
So
useful.
then it was
useful.
me, you and Ali, right? Sitting next to each other?
Yeah.
Ollie?
Yeah.
And early on, I think things were going pretty well. We were ordering quite a few drinks. We had the system going on where one of us would get 2 and then the other was get 2. Keep that going for a bit.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
And then me and you were chatting for a while. Like, you know what it's like on planes. Sometimes you just like it's effort watching the films and the TV and stuff, isn't it? It's like it's just too much effort to even do that. But anyway, we were chatting for ages. I think I watched a film, and then you were sort of awake. You'd fallen asleep, and then you woke up. We started chatting again. And then you had this really sort of glazed look on your face and in your eyes, and you were just like you were just looking forward, and you sort of mumbled to me, "I feel really weird," And I was like, why? What's the matter? And as soon as I asked that question, your eyes like sort of rolled into the back of your head, and then you had your arm up, like you touched your face, and your arm just sort of like dropped, and I was like, and I was looking at you, and I was like,
terrifying.
I was like, has he just fallen asleep like mid sort of conversation? but the whole thing, because it was such a weird thing to happen, I just kept looking at you, and then I started shaking you to try and wake you up, because I was like, that just looked too weird. That didn't just look like someone falling asleep. You weren't waking up. I touched your forehead, and actually, do you know what I did? I even checked your pulse on your neck. I touched your forehead, and you were sweating, but you were freezing.
Didn't you dig your fingernail into my hand?
Yeah, I dug my fingernails into your hand. I even slapped you.
He did that.
which was uncalled for. It was just me taking out my anger.
Oh, he's out.
I must apologise. Yeah, Ali had to pull me off you, but no.
Well, hadn't this time? By this point, Ali had been quite concerned as well, and got up from his seat and went round to my side.
Yeah, because this happened, and I turned to Ali, who was watching something. I grabbed him, and he pulled his headphones off, and I was like, something weird's just happened to Mike, and he sort of leant over me and had a look as well. And I was then, by this point, I was really trying to shake you to wake you up. And by which point I started to get super worried, obviously, because you weren't responding at all. And you were freezing cold. And, you know, I'm no medical expert, and I didn't really know what to do, but I certainly know when something's not right. And so by which point I think Ali then pressed the button that you have overhead to get like an air steward or stewardess over, and somebody came over. Died. And we were like, our friend's just passed out, basically.
He's dead.
There's no
died. Just exaggerating straight away. Our friend's dead.
But funnily enough, Mike, do you not remember someone earlier on in that flight as well kind of did something exactly the same? It was a woman that was freaking out in some way, and they had to get a load of people over and move seats for her. I think she passed out as well, which is odd that it happened to her, because me and you were like, bloody hell, that's it's quite intense to watch, but it was one of those things that you just can't not watch. You shouldn't watch it because you want to respect their privacy, but at the same time,
I mean, it happened right in front of us, to be fair. She got put in the row in front of us as well, but yeah, fascinating. And us just there knocking back drinks.
Yeah, we're like, bloody hell, that's unfortunate. Little did we know. And then
I mean, were you freaking out at this point? Were you like agitated?
Well, yeah, because I genuinely I felt his pulse, so I knew that he was alive. But obviously, that's not a great situation to be in, whether or not you've even got to check the pulse of someone to check if they're alive.
Next to you.
But they came over and they were like, immediately to me, they were like, what's he taken? Is he taking anything? I was like, well, nothing. As far as I know, nothing.
That's classic, like America. What's he on? What's he?
I was.
Yeah. Anyway, that's another story. Go on.
In the first time,
but yeah, I mean, you hadn't taken anything, no. and it was sort of unexplainable why that happened at that point. But then they were like, right, we need to get him to the back of the plane, and I don't know if you've ever tried lifting a limp body and pulling it up out of a plane seat and then dragging it down the aisle of a plane.
What?
As you do.
Yeah. I mean, I needed some help. There was like 3 people that carried
what
him.
A fucking scene! What a scene for the rest of the plane.
I know. And to be fair, I mean, at that point as well, I didn't give a fuck what kind of scene anyone was causing, because it was like, you know, you just go into sort of autopilot at that stage and just sort of do what you need to do. But we got you to the back of the plane, and then they brought out this oxygen tank and put this oxygen mask over your face. And then, honestly, within like 20 seconds of you having that, you came round and you were just totally fine. It was like nothing had happened. You didn't know why you were there or why you had oxygen going like, directly into your face. But and you were like, oh, fine, yeah, totally fine. But everyone else around you was completely fucking shell shocked. You're like, yeah, it's all good, yeah, fine, yeah. You're like, you're not fine.
Singing some back, I'll have 2 more straight, please.
It was like that. That was the weirdest thing, because it was like someone being on death's door, and then the next minute being like, yeah, fun that, wasn't it?
It's when you were dragging Mike down the aisle, I mean, like, it amazes me that through all this chaos, I was fast asleep on the back row for the whole thing, which is shocking to me anyway. But when you were dragging Mike down the aisle, I'm just trying to imagine what that must have looked like. It must have looked like some sort of murder scene out of a fucking movie or something. But like, is it just you dragging him down?
Yeah. It was weird.
Was it you and a stewardess or what?
It was. No, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on my own. And I think I had the legs. And
I wondered why my flies were undone when I woke up.
I had the legs, and I think it was a couple of flight attendants.
What the fuck? I can't believe I missed
as well
this.
That were helping. There was a proper crew helping move Mike to the back.
I was crowd surfing to the back. Over the seat.
But obviously, once he then came back and sat down, and sort of everyone was happy that he was all right. The rest of my plane journey was just so anxiety ridden, because I couldn't keep my eyes off him, because I was sat right next to him. I was watching you like a hawk, and then you fell asleep. You fell asleep at one point, or a couple of points actually, and I kept waking you up just to check that you would wake up.
The death.
How long into the flight did it happen? The first, the actual
passing
out.
I would say it was probably halfway through. So
yeah, I think it was.
You know when you get
out for a while and you'd watched a film.
Yeah, when you get to the point where they sort of turn all the lights down on a plane, and it's just like that dim lighting. So it was like that as well. So it was quite dark. But yeah, I kept waking you up, and then you kept waking up and being quite annoyed that I woke you up. But I thought it best that I do that.
That's loving it.
My memory of that is literally feeling fucking terrible, just for very like maybe 5 seconds before it all happened. And I remember like my breathing had started to slow down. I was like, whoa, this doesn't feel good. I feel weird. I remember saying that to you. I'm completely blacked out. And then my next thing is waking up with my hand absolutely killing, because Ollie had been checking to see if I would wake up by digging his nail into my hand. And at the back of the plane. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And just sat down and I was like, all right, let's just get on with it then, shall we?
Well, I mean, unfortunately at the time as well, because I did think like, well, should I sort of take you to the medic or the doctor when we get to the airport or something? But at the time, you and I were living together as well. So I was like, well, at least like we're going to be going back to the same flat. So, I
As
can
his nurse.
sort of keep an eye on you as well there. Whereas, I don't know, it was just such a weird thing, and you were totally fine after that, and that's the weird thing about it. So it was just, I guess, I don't know how or why it happened, but I can only assume that it was just like complete.
Yeah, I think it was that.
Yeah,
I thought about it for quite a while afterwards, why that would have happened, because obviously you hadn't taken anything like painkillers or anything. I think, and none of us could like figure it out. But then I was like, well, we were all absolutely like beyond humanly reasonably fucked.
I mean, you slept on a flight.
Yeah,
that's a sign.
I slept for 8 hours on a flight, not just a little nap.
Nuts.
8 hours. I've never done that in my whole life of touring ever. Like, we were fucked, man. And like, I remember after that tour, when we got back to the UK and we were in London and stuff, I was weird for weeks. Like, I was so exhausted. I felt like I was an empty shell for weeks.
Didn't we jump straight into the UK tour after that? Because I remember, because I remember coming to see. I hadn't seen you guys in a month or whatever, and we met on the hill in Brixton, and you guys looked fucking destroyed. I was like, oh yeah,
so
cool.
we landed.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, it was.
And then the following day we went into pre-production because we had to, because we hadn't seen you. We had 1 day between landing and then starting the UK tour. So, you know, we only had 1 day to actually rest, but that rest day was a pre-production day anyway. So, so that didn't happen.
Oh man, those island shows were fun, but my god, they were some of the toughest shows I think I've ever done as a human being who's turning up to do any kind of work. I think they take the biscuit as two of the hardest.
Only because we'd finished in London as well, didn't we? We finished at Scala and then you
drove over, didn't we?
Yeah, we drove over to Wales, didn't we? We were getting a ferry, and then Matt Jim flew over.
Which was the when we landed from Canada?
Flyers.
Was that the time you and me then had to drive the stuff back to Brixton Hill, and I was falling asleep? Was that it?
Yeah. I can't remember. It must have been, because we
you and me drove.
We had pre-prod the next day, and we had all of the gear with us, didn't we? So we must have had to have we must have gotten somewhere, got a van or whatever, drove down to Brixton, dropped it all off, and then
fucking hell,
gone home, and then gone back down to Brixton again the next day for that.
Right, well, good times reminiscing about the fun that is touring.
Well, we're lucky to have you still here.
Cool,
and me by the sound of things.
That was actually really rad, reminiscing all of that, because I mean, having Ollie reminisce to it, it's like an added layer of detail for me that I'd even sort of forgotten. So it was cool. Yeah,
I know. It's good to hear it.
I'm dripping with sweat, and
all right, dude,
from the story.
Yeah,
scared me.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for jumping on.
Well, thank you for having me on, boys. It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you at the next one.
Yeah, mate. Anytime.
See you at the next one, I guess.
That's great, man.
All right, later. Bye.
See you on the flip.
All right. Have a good one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.